Bienvenue à Asiate Imparfaite. Welcome to Imperfect Asian. Cet épisode est en anglais. I am your host, Laura Nem. In this podcast, I have conversations with other atypical Asian Canadians.
You can swear and speak Franglish or...
Okay, Franglish.
Yeah, that's what's good about not getting a grant. It's just you can do like French interviews, English interviews,
Yeah, for
and
sure.
swear.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Thanks for having me.
I need to do your introduction. It's Kyungseo. So. Alright.
Today, my guest is Kyungseo Min. Kyungseo is 26 years old, born in South Korea, immigrated to Calgary when she was 6, and now living in Montreal. She's an activist, a playwright, a writer for video games, a translator, a performer, a multidisciplinary person, really. I discovered her because she started collecting testimonies of racist incidents against people of Asian descent in Quebec since the COVID-19 pandemic started. She played a significant role in getting the media and politicians to recognize the issue. This effort, amongst others, eventually resulted in the passing of a motion denouncing anti-Asian racism in Montreal, and culminated in Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Montreal Mayor Valérie Plante recognizing the existence of systemic racism. We spoke about her parents, immigration, being an Asian woman, her play Yankee Princess, self-expression, and healing. I should warn you that I read an excerpt of her play, and it references physical violence against an Asian woman. One of the many reasons I wanted her on the show is because a lot of my other guests had, and are still having, a difficult relationship with their parents. That's not her case. They supported her when she decided to go into the arts.
I think, I did fight a lot with my parents, like in high school. Like all throughout my childhood, I was the perfect Asian, right? I got straight A's, I did all these like extracurriculars, and I played an instrument, and I learned French. I went to French immersion. I did like the IB program. Like,
What's the IB?
IB is like International Baccalaureate program, so it's like you get to do university level courses in high school, like super Asian, right? Like and like my mom would enroll me in like math tutors during summer vacation, so I would be in grade 10. And, end of grade 10 comes, the summer vacation's there. My mom would enroll me in math tutor, so I would learn the grade 11 math curriculum in the summer, so that when grade 11 comes around, I'd be, like, ready, I guess. Like, super perfect Asian, right? And my parents had high hopes for me, and unfortunately, those were dashed. But yeah, we fought a lot when it came down to choosing, like, a major or, like, what university I wanted to go to. When I told them I wanted to study theater, they're like, but why would you do that? Mm-hmm. Like, you're so smart, you're so good at math. Why would you waste your talent and intellect on that? As if being in the arts required no intellect. Right? We fought a lot, I remember. And I'm pretty stubborn, so I think I won through sheer stubbornness. Mm-hmm. But I think in the end, they came to support me because they could see that I could be successful in doing this. Like, I haven't exactly, like, made it. Like, I'm not Sandra Oh or something, but...
Okay, you're only 25.
Yeah, exactly, 26, yeah. But I think they're seeing... My high school theater teacher would say, you have a talent in this. Like, you have a talent for writing, you have a talent for performing. And that was sort of the first time anyone in my life had ever sort of told me I had a talent for something other than academics. Like, it wasn't even a thought to me that I could be talented in something other than like math, sciences, right?
Wow.
So she sort of opened those doors for me, and my parents didn't believe her, right? Like, oh, like she's a high school theater teacher. What does she know, right? like all these like very like negative comments, but with people's responses to me and my work, they're sort of realizing like, oh, like maybe she's not bad.
Right. And that's okay.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, maybe she's not bad.
She's not gonna embarrass her family.
Exactly. Like, we won't need to like, move to Northwest Territories or something.
So random. Why did you guys immigrate to Canada?
So it was actually my mother's decision. And funnily enough, my dad didn't believe her until like the airplane tickets were bought. But my mom she grew up most of her life in South Korea. And when she gave birth to my brother, the first thing she thought of was, oh my God, I have to send my son to military. Because in South Korea, there's still mandatory military service for men. And she had lost 2 of her brothers through military service. So she had that sort of fear. Like, how can I send my son to the military? And then when I was born, you know, her being a Korean woman, you know, in a very patriarchal society, she was like, how can I, you know, raise my daughter in this like severely patriarchal society? So at that point, she decided to immigrate. Just, you know, sort of the same story as everyone.
But she had like really liberal thinking.
In some ways, yeah, she did. I think she just couldn't stand the way that life was being molded by Korean society. She didn't want that for us. And she wanted us to be a bit more free as far as our opportunities go and stuff like that. So she did make the decision to immigrate to Canada. Yeah. And it was hilarious. Like, she didn't tell us. I mean, I was only 6. My brother was only 8. And like, I remember one day, like, there was no furniture in our apartment. And the last meal we had in our Korean apartment was like instant noodles.
Okay. There was no more
yeah,
food.
like ramen. Yeah, there's no more food, and like the only thing we had was like a gas stove.
A gas burner.
Yeah, like a gas burner. And then like I thought we were going on vacation, right?
Had you guys taken English classes?
No, not a lick. And my mom like knew a little bit of English, my dad too, but like definitely not enough to immigrate with confidence. Yeah, but. Yeah, it was interesting. We landed and it was freezing. It was like late November, and we just went to a motel, and I think it was very brave of her. And
Definitely.
Even she says it herself. Like, I don't think I could do it again if you asked me to. Like the courage came from pure ignorance of like what she was getting herself into.
When did you start feeling racialized?
I would say not until university, which is actually quite late. Alberta has this sort of image of being a very hick redneck town, but Calgary is actually quite cosmopolitan, very multicultural, even more so, I think, than Montreal. And when I was growing up in elementary, junior high, and high school, I never felt I was Asian. Because I was surrounded by like Latinos, like Vietnamese, like other Koreans, Chinese people, Black people, and we never really saw each other as the race. I think we had that sort of innocence of childhood. We just saw each other as people.
And everyone was different to each other.
Exactly. So like in our common differences, we almost became similar, right? Because everyone was different. And then when I went to university, and I went to university in the States, I went to USC in LA, I had to take the international, what is it, like freshman international orientation, because I was Canadian and that's international.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. And I remember I was surrounded by Asian people from Asia, like, Chinese nationals and, Korean nationals and all these people. And there was this woman, this like white woman, like really blonde hair, and she did this orientation about, I remember her saying, when American people say what's up, it doesn't mean like what's on the ceiling. It's a form of saying hello. And I remember just sitting there being like, what the fuck is this? Like, like, I'm sorry. Like, if you're educated enough to pass the SATs and like pass the TOEFL exam to like get here as an Asian student, like, what the fuck what's up means.
And it's just like, don't talk to us in this condescending,
exactly,
like,
it's just so way. Condescending, right?
Super childish.
Yeah,
way.
Super childish. Like, we were like 18, like we weren't dumb, right? And I just remember sitting there being like, I'm Asian. Like, I just had this like looking in the mirror and being like, oh my God, I'm Asian. And because there were a lot of international students from Asia in that school, countless times I would, start talking to someone and they'd be like, wow, your English is great. Because they thought I was, from like mainland Korea, right? And I was like, well, I'm actually Canadian. And they would go, whoa, like Canada? Like, do you guys like ride on polar bears or something? Like, I kid you not, I've had the most like ignorant conversations.
In LA.
In LA, of all places, right? And I was at an institution of higher learning, which is, I think, the more ironic part. But I think that's when I realized I was Asian, I was different, and I was an Asian woman at that. And I remember like it was a really dark period in my life where I felt really unfair. Like, why was I born an Asian woman? Right? Because the way I was treated was different. And I was going to theater school, and there were not a lot of Asian people in the theater school. Like, I think there was like 10 people, right? Max, in the performance and writing stream. Like, I think me and like one other person was the other only Asian person. And yeah, like I just started really like hating the color of my skin and like my culture at that time. Yeah.
Because people weren't treating you?
Yeah, like people weren't treating me with, I guess, someone who is intelligent enough to attend this sort of institution, like fancy, posh institution. And, you know, people were sort of forcing me to, like, adopt certain, like, they were sort of surprised when I would be a bit more outspoken.
So you wrote a play titled Yankee Princess, and it's based on the really horrible rape and murder of Yoon Kum-yi in 1992 in a U.S. Army-based town in South Korea.
Yes.
And some of the themes are the fetishization of Asian women and toxic male masculinity. I just want to read a part, and then we'll talk about it, okay? So, Kum-yi, the main character, who's a prostitute, is having sex with a white American soldier, and he goes, "Shit, your tight little Asian pussy feels so fucking good. You like that, huh? When your insides get spread wide by a white man, those small-ass motherfuckers can't give you what I can give you." And he hits her really hard and proceeds to saying, "I thought these Asian girls are supposed to, like, worship us or whatever, fucking two-faced. They play the fucking sweetheart to get what they want, and they get it. All they have to do is just smile and press their breasts against men's arms, and it's fucking handed to them on a silver platter. What the fuck? What the fucking fuck?" And he starts to laugh.
Rated PG-13.
So, I mean, as an Asian woman myself, I mean, that attitude and those hidden thoughts that men have is something that I get reminded of, like, constantly in my life. And it's a message that's, like, in everything. I don't know, like, even, like, growing up, and this is Americans in South Korea, and even growing up, like, every model, every time we saw, like, in pop culture, an Asian woman, it was always that submissive.
It's either the submissive sort of nerd who is, you know, behind glasses, or like super highly sexualized, like, you know, the Tokyo Drift models on supercars.
But either way, the white man can get to her.
Exactly.
Like, for the shy one, it'll be like she'll just be like super shy and giggle, and at one point he'll just kind of,
she'll like take off her glasses and suddenly be like a sexual beast in bed, and, you know, that's just every white man's fantasy. Yeah, it's especially with the presence of online dating now. Like, I think there was a study that came out where Asian women were the most desirable on online dating, like they got the most amount of likes, and Asian men were the least preferable on the other side. And I sort of deal with this either, you know, whether the man isn't even aware,
right,
that he has these sort of fantasies or these inner sort of expectations. You know, once you actually start looking out for it and realize what the little subtle signs are, or the cues, you realize every person has it.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter how, like, woke they think they are, right? I know men who only date Asian women.
This happened to me twice, where a guy was interested in me and I wasn't. And I guess because I wasn't, they just went out to find another Asian person, because they just, you know, they wanted to have sex with me.
Right.
I woke that something in them that made them want to have sex with an Asian girl. And then, like, after getting rejected by me, they just went off
to find
another Asian girl. So it was just like a replaceable like female genitalia.
Yeah, we are, it's like Asian woman has become like a checklist, like, things I'd like to fuck.
Yeah.
And like brag to other people, like, oh, I fucked a black girl before, I fucked an Asian girl before, right? Like, we're just commodities.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the construction of Asian femininity from a Western perspective was historically and culturally like so perfect for the male ego, right? Like, we are exotic, and toxic male masculinity states that you have to be strong and bigger than the girl and dominate her sexually and feel like your cock is getting sucked on by like a subservient girl. And the Asian girl checks marks all of that, right? Even like, who was that white woman comedian? Like, I think she like once said in one of her like comedy skits, like, I can't compete with an Asian pussy,
mm-hmm.
right?
And she wasn't, I don't think she was almost like, that was like, oh, that's a fact.
Yeah, like it
wasn't necessarily like her being racist. It was
right.
just like, oh, this is how men are.
Right, exactly. And the whole fetishization is just like the perfect counterpoint to male egos. The whole exotic thing, we're like smaller than, I guess, like other women of other ethnicities, and
mm-hmm.
the whole like Madame Butterfly of love the white man so much I'm willing to sacrifice myself, right? Like, kill myself because I love this white guy so much.
All these movies, like, I still have trouble feeling comfortable in my body because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, in film, it's a really male-dominated world.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm often the only person of color.
Plus you're a woman.
Plus I'm a woman. Yeah. Before going to meetings, especially when I was starting my career, I would change. Like, I wouldn't dress like this. Today I'm wearing a dress and no bra. And I would just change into jeans and a t-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
And just make sure, like, I wouldn't wear makeup.
Mm-hmm.
I just made sure that, like
any femininity was gone.
Right. Like, just trying to compensate the fact that people might fetishize me that way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that doesn't make me feel good. It's just, I'm just like repressing who I am and being self-conscious in a way that's like, it's not me.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I know that it affects how people treat me. So it's like, it's still like something to be aware of. And
yeah. And we have to play the game. A game that, the rules were not created for our advantage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, I just thought of something. Just because you said that, should I say this?
Off the record?
No, on the record. My first boyfriend was of Vietnamese descent, and he had a huge dick. So Asian men don't have small dicks, okay?
Oh my god. Asian masculinity is also something very interesting to me. The fact that they're so demasculinized.
But according to what standard anyways?
I don't know. Like, I'm sure some condom brand has released some sort of infographic on, like, we sell the smallest sizes in Taiwan or something. I don't fucking know.
I guess there's, like, one thing I feel like sharing, which is not, I guess, like, necessarily right, but, like, with the model minority myth, being a woman, being an Asian woman, it just feels stuck. Like, it's difficult to feel free and to feel liberated, live in a way that's liberated from that.
I personally feel the most free and liberated when I am doing something I love doing. So like when I am writing, like even though I'm writing about topics such as, fetishization and stuff like that, I feel the most free. Like, it's, for me, the page is where I can be me without all of these sort of hashtags or, categorizations that people love to put me under, like, Asian Canadian, Korean Canadian, like woman, all these things. I don't have to be that. I am just graphite smears on a page, right? For me, at least personally, that's how I've sort of found my liberation in through my craft and in wanting to get better at my craft. Because I always hesitate when I have to rely on someone for something. That's just like my personality. Like, I hate asking for help.
Yeah. I have that issue
yeah,
too.
Exactly. One of my mentors once always stressed this. And it sounds really depressing when you hear it, but, she would say, we entered this world alone and we will leave the world alone. Right? So at the end, all you have is really yourself. So you have to really make peace with yourself. And I don't think you can make peace with yourself until you are at war with yourself. Like, I needed that period when I was in university, hating myself, hating the fact that I have a uterus, hating the fact that I have boobs, hating the fact that I had to wear a bra, like, hating this color of my skin, to be at this point where I'm definitely not 100% at peace with it, but I can be okay with it.
You spoke about feeling the most free when you're writing or when you're like doing your art, and since I was young, writing was always my go-to medium. So writing for me is like the relationship between me and words, and then but there's also dancing, which is the relationship between just me and my body,
Right, for sure.
and I'm talking about that with you because you practice a couple of
dance forms.
Right.
So I studied Buto with several people for several years, and a type of Japanese traditional dance called Nihonbuyo for a couple of years.
Like, how do you find that connection with your body or with words? And
I mean, I think with words you just have to write, right? Whether like you want to be a writer or, that has no, like, that doesn't matter if like this is your goal or not. Just write, say whatever's on your mind, and treat the page as like a close friend, right? And as far as like dancing goes, I always viewed, I think like a lot of women and girls growing up, like I always had this sort of love-hate relationship with my body, right?
Exactly.
And the fact that like I can't control it to look exactly the way I want it or to move exactly the way I want it. So for me, like learning dance, especially like highly stylized forms of dance, was always sort of my way of gaining control of my body, like, learning spatial awareness and, just gaining mastery over all the muscles, right? And to, do sports or do dance, like, is only honing that vehicle of expression so that you have complete power over what you are expressing, right? Like, if I'm saying I want to be sexy in this moment to this person, or just in this moment in general, like, I know exactly how to move my body to get that across, right? Versus someone who maybe, are sort of less at ease with their body, they might come across sexy, they might not, like, it might, like, there's all these sort of gray areas. But I feel like, if you do dance or any sort of physical activity, you learn at what angle do you have to like tilt your neck, or, all these sort of like lines and things to make sure you come across either sexy or strong or vulnerable, or, all these things.
And like, a lot of the things that you write seem to be Asian focused.
I think, I wrote, my first play was actually nothing to do with Asian culture or anything, and it was almost too easy. Like, it was so easy to write it, and like it didn't stimulate me really.
It just felt like another story.
And like, it was a story I wanted to tell, like Beethoven, blah blah blah, but like, at the end it didn't really spark a fire in me. And then when I decided to sort of write more about Asian and Korean issues, like, I realized like that's sort of where I feel the most uncomfortable, and therefore I want to do it more.
You seem to be really close to your Korean side still. I mean, you cook, you can read, right, and talk.
Right. I think it came very, very late. I mean, like, it came in the last like 3 years, I think, this sort of identification as a Korean woman. I think as I grew up, I started noticing more and more sides of me that were more Korean than Canadian. And, blood is thicker than water. Like, my mom has always said, I've always fought against this. Like, when I was little, my mom always said, like, they're never going to see you as a Canadian, honey. Like, they're always going to see you as a Asian person. Like, they're never going to go, oh, look, it's a Canadian when they look at you, right? And I always fought that. I was like, no, like, I'm a Canadian. Like, and like, hear me roar. Like, I will fight to be recognized as a Canadian. But then as I grew older, I recognized that more and more parts of my personality and the way I think is very Korean. And, I started making more Korean friends. Like, I used to have this thing where I didn't want Korean friends. I was like, no, like, I don't want Korean friends.
That's actually really interesting. I haven't spoken about that yet. This idea, when you grew up as BIPOC,
Right.
You just know that people, I mean, obviously you're not the norm.
Right. You're a minority.
You're a
Yeah.
minority. And I used to be really, and I've heard that from other people, from other Asians specifically, that some Asians we got really self-aware of like attaching to ourselves to like another Asian person.
Yeah.
Like I remember, not necessarily wanting to be with them because I would stereotype, oh, they're part of the more like the typical Asian, and I'm not. So already when you're atypical, you're like, oh, I don't fit with them. But there was also this side of me being like, oh, if I hang out with them, people will stereotype me.
Right, we'll lump you in with that group.
Exactly. Not allow me to just show them who I am.
Right, as an individual. Yeah, for sure. I totally get it, and I think that's the reason why I think a lot of Asian people do that, is because they want to be seen as like a unique individual and not just, put whatever country here. I think I got over that, interestingly. I was taking this writing class in New York, and I was talking to this one playwright. I forgot their names, but I was saying, like, I don't want to be lumped as, like, the Korean writer or like, the writer who only writes about, like, immigrant experience. Like, I don't want to be tied down to an artistic statement, and only write about this issue and be kind of the token Asian writer, right? And I had this concern, and I told them that. And there was this one thing that they told me that totally opened my mind, is that you're not as unique as you think you are, right? Yes, your lived history and all your thoughts make you a unique person, but you are not the only person to have thought those things or to have experienced those things. Like, there is actually a community for you. I have found some communities that I identify with and, go to these people when I need to scratch a certain itch, right? But I think also there is a great power in creating your own community, in pulling the people that you are attracted to and creating your own little circle, right? Yeah. Like, I don't think I remember, like, I struggled with that a lot after graduating. Like, where's my community? Like, where are they? And I would go find them. And, like, that's part of the reason why I moved to Montreal, because I was like, okay, like, I haven't found my community in Calgary. Maybe there's a community for me in Montreal. And then, like, I sort of struggled in Montreal as well. And then I was like, well, fuck it, I'm going to create my own community.
Attract the people.
Exactly, that I want to work with and be with and be inspired by.
And proactively reach out and keep them in your lives. And like, I have an Asian posse, so.
You have, like, matching jackets that says Asian posse.
No, I mean, I've had Asian friends. I started having more of a group of Asian friends, let's say, when I was in junior high. And in my elementary school, we were only two Asians in my grade, and the other one actually lived on the same street I grew up in, and is of Cambodian descent. When I got to junior high, these Asian people who already knew each other, like these guys, one of them, who ended up being my best friend for a couple of years, until he became a criminal.
Oh my god. The people you know. Yeah. Wait, like a high profile criminal, or just like, on a petty?
I don't know. Okay. I'm not gonna get into it, but he slowly got into the world of crime, and I don't know what he's doing now. But anyway, so that guy, at one point, when he wasn't into that stuff, was like, oh, an Asian girl that we don't know. So we just went like, hey, what's your name? Yeah. And like, come hang with us. Oh. And then he just gave me that space where we all had these references that were similar, and he was of Cambodian descent as well. He had so much energy, and he was so like comfortable in his Asianness. I mean, he was super Asian pride.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And I wasn't. But that made me feel good to be with people that were comfortable, that felt prideful of their Asianness. And so throughout my teenage years, I had an Asian posse, and I still have Asian friends today with whom we talk a lot about our parents and communicating with them, like healing and things like that. So I think it's definitely an important thing to have.
Yeah, to find someone who, not to say that they have only one identity, but someone who is so defined in their identity and okay with that, can sort of really help put our own blurry identities into perspective sometimes. Yeah. Yeah.
I ask these 2 questions to every one of my guests to finish the show. What do you like the most about yourself?
Oh. You know, this is really hard for an Asian person because they hate bragging. At least for Koreans.
You can be like, I'm really humble.
I'm really humble. The humble brag. What do I like about myself? I mean, I'm privileged. I've never really faced hunger or war or poverty. But I think as far as sort of cultural battles and identity battles and mental health battles and all these things, I've gone through a bit. And what surprised me every time is I come out on the other side relatively okay. Like, oh, you know, I still have all my limbs, my 10 fingers, my 10 toes. So,
and you come out of them still with friends.
yeah, with friends or like a better sense of self and like a direction, I think. So yeah, I think my resilience is, I think, what I most like about myself.
And what would you tell yourself, your 18-year-old self?
Oh boy, some dark times are coming. I would say learn how to have fun and relax, because I think even now I feel a great guilt every time I am not doing something. Like, I feel like I could be using this time in a productive way, or, you know, writing the next magnum opus. But, you know, enjoy your youth. Having fun is not a sin. You know, relaxing and taking a break is not a sign of weakness. I think I would tell myself, my 18-year-old self, that.
Thanks for hanging out.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a great conversation. Awesome.
Did you want to do a room tone?
Oh, yes.
A what?
Wow.
Okay. A room tone is just like a minute of silence.
Oh, okay.
It's just background noise.
Okay. I don't need to like breathe loudly, do I?
There it is. I think you could hear that she feels like an old friend. Someone that could come over to hang out in my apartment as I'm doing laundry. I hope you enjoyed our conversation. Go check out other episodes to hear Asian Canadians finding strength to be themselves. Thank you for listening to Imperfect Asian. Thank you, Kyungseo. Thank you to my collaborators, Emmanuel Hessler and Shitakun Bakam.